Sorry, hello. It's so good to see you. It's Tuesday night, it's winning, it's live online, and a very chilly good evening. Hello, everyone out there. Hope you've had a good week. Hope you've had a productive week. Can't believe that we've hit July, and really looking forward to when hopefully at the end of the July time that the sun starts rising earlier and setting so much later. I'm just busy getting ready for my book launch, which is happening on the 27th of July, which is a Sunday. And I am going to be keeping the title of the book a secret until the launch. So if you're interested, you can check out on socials. I've got things that will be coming up. I'm so grateful to the team who are helping me put all of this together, a group of amazing people who are so creative. And I'm just so grateful for the different platforms to really promote stuff on. I mean, we're spoilt for choice. And so look out for that. Love you to come. It's an open event on the 27th of July at 11:30 in the courtyard of Authentic City Church, which is in Harfield Road, number 60 in Kenilworth. So we've got a number of exciting things lined up for the launch. And it is the launch of book number 2. And so hope you enjoyed last week. Last week we looked at wonder over works and how we can't spend time wondering what it's going to be like to serve God, to do things, hey Jen, to lift lives, to connect people to Jesus. We actually need to do it. And so tonight I'm actually going to roll on from what we did last Tuesday and kind of do like a part 2. Those of you who were able to catch my preach on Sunday, that was also rolling on the back of Wonder Over Works. And so if you'd like to get hold of that preach, you can go onto social and you'll find the link to be able to catch that preach. And so tonight we're looking at service check, and that's looking at kind of doing an inventory on our serving and serving God. You know, so often the platform that we serve God in is the church. And so I want to look at, in terms of doing a service check, looking at serving at church and how you serve at church and what motivates you to serve and how's that working not for you, but how is it working for the recipients of your serving? Because serving God's way is never ever about us. It's always about Him. Tonight we're going to look at what motivated Jesus to serve, and we need to catch on to, and we need to replicate what motivated him needs to motivate us. I think if we've got the wrong motive for serving, it's not sustainable, and then we just become frustrated and burnt out. And so tonight is really exciting because it's not just about the serving, it's what serving captures. Serving is a means of, first of all, obedience, because we're saved to serve. So serving means we are communicating our love for God. Serving means we are communicating our love for God, which means we love others. I've said it so many times before. To be on the same page as God means you love the church, you love Jesus, and you love people. If we get that right, we're on the same page as Him. So serving is about communicating that love. It's an act of obedience, but also serving is the point at which we grow. We grow when we serve. If I look at my over 27 years in full-time ministry, and I see how people who are on the peripheral and who just spectate, they just don't grow. But it's the guys who serve. And when I say grow, I'm speaking holistically. They grow spiritually, they grow in terms of their skill set, they grow in confidence. And so often I've seen when people serve at church, it sets them up for when they go out and they start a career in the workplace. We have a policy at church, you're serving at church, add it to your CV, because there's so much more than just, I got to do and I got to work at church. It's so much more than that. And so good to see all of you jumping on. Zama, Zan, Trace, welcome. And so let's look at service check tonight. And so Matthew 20:28 really captures the fact that Jesus came as a servant leader. Jesus by birthright, he could have come to be served. He could have come as a majestic Pharaoh. He could have come as one of the highest ranking Pharisees who would have demanded and commanded respect, but he didn't. He didn't come like that at all. He didn't come in a position of secular authority. He didn't come in a position of forced obedience or forced honor. He came in a place of being humble and serving and loving through serving, and his greatness was through his serving. Where the Bible says, humble yourself in the sight of the Lord and he will lift you up. He taught us what it means to be a servant leader. And when we look at servant leadership, it's not just a style of leadership. Servant leadership is actually a lifestyle. And let's look at that today as we do the service check. So here's Matthew 20:28. This is what the Son of Man has done. He came to serve, not to be served, and then to give away his life in exchange for the many who are held hostage. I think that's the greatest act of serving, is that he died for people who had never met him. But yet he died once and for all. He gave up his life. What a great act of servant leadership. And so last week when we looked at Wonder Over Works, and we looked at, what is our purpose? And I'm going to read it again as a recap, Matthew 5 in the Message. And it reads as follows. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here to be salt seasoning that brings out the God flavors of this earth. Here's another way to put it. You're here to be light, bringing out the God colors in this world. God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill. So we are called, we are instructed. The word says, let me tell you why you are here, to be salt and light. And we unpacked what that meant last week. And if you missed that, you can go onto YouTube and you can pick up that particular input session. But in order to be effective salt and light, we need to have a servant heart. We need to see serving from the right perspective and interpret serving the way that Jesus meant it to be interpreted. I don't know about you, but I've had an experience or experiences before where I've been served by a grumpy waiter. It's like they clearly don't like their job. They don't like you. They don't want to serve you. And it's very clear what their feelings are. It's seen in their expression. It's seen in their surliness. They're just not responsive. And I remember once when I took my parents to a food chain that's actually closed down, and I wonder why. I took them out for a breakfast, and the waitress was like a really grumpy teenager. She didn't want to be there. We were sort of like trying to, pull her out of herself, just no response, hardly greeting, not making eye contact when she was taking our orders. My late dad had a very quirky sense of humor, and he was trying to, crack jokes, and it was just no response, just like cardboard cutout person. And it was almost like you felt like apologizing, like, oh gosh, I'm so sorry that I'm here in this eatery. I'm so sorry that you have to serve us. And so as we left, I felt so convicted to actually go and say something to her. I could have gone to the manager, but I just felt the Lord say to me, you need to go and talk to her. And I sort of came in from the approach, do you know what your lack of communication and connection did for our experience? Do you understand what it's like to be on the receiving end of this? And then I sort of challenged her in terms of, are you grateful for your job? Maybe you want to be somewhere else, but there are others who would really love your job and do a much better job of doing your job for you. And I really felt that it was a moment to kind of give her a look into the receiving end of just a really bad attitude. And she apologized. But it was more, I didn't want an apology. I wanted her to understand what it's like to be on the receiving end of that bad experience. Service is never about self. Service, godly service, is always about sacrifice. Serving is not about self-promotion. Serving is an opportunity. If we serve for gain, so if we're serving for visibility, if we're serving for accolade, it's just not sustainable. And we will become resentful if we don't get the returns that we hoped for. And when our service doesn't result in the fulfillment of our agenda. Whereas if our agenda is other focused, we're going to be rewarded. The reward would be seeing someone respond to you reaching out. And it doesn't always happen that when you're serving with a servant's heart that you're well received. Sometimes you're not. And that's actually not your business. Your business is, are you serving sacrificially? Are you serving with the other person in mind? And so me complaining to that waitress, it was kind of like a service check moment. And that's what I want us to do tonight in terms of our serving. And it doesn't just have to be serving at church. It can be serving in the workplace. It can be serving in your family. And let's maybe do a quick serving inventory. And I'm going to be specifically speaking about church. So if you're not attending church at the moment, you can possibly parallel this to your workspace. But my question is, why aren't you at church? Just sort of landing that on the conversation table. So looking at, are you serving at the church you attend? If you aren't, why is that? Did you have a bad experience somewhere else? Do you just feel I work in the week? I don't want to also work on a Sunday. What is your reason for not serving? And kind of like park that here as you absorb the content of tonight. Are you resentful about serving at church? Do you do it as it's really just a tick box? There's no joy or there's no enjoyment whatsoever. You feel obliged, you feel obligated. What's motivating you? Is it because you feel obligated? Is it a sense of guilt? Are you wanting recognition? Do you feel you have to serve? Do you feel you're doing the church a favor? So maybe just kind of ask yourself, why am I serving? What is the motivating? What's driving me to do it? And then what place are you serving from? Are you serving from a place of gratitude? Are you serving from a place of overflow? Your tanks in your life are so full, or maybe your tanks in your life are empty. Are you serving from a place of resentment? Are you serving from a place of exhaustion? What is your space that you're serving from? And then I kind of want to make the statement, our hearts need to reflect the hearts of Jesus and what motivated him to serve. I mean, he washed feet, and feet in even now, I mean, I know we have podiatrists and you go for pedis, but I mean, dealing with feet is not always seen as glamorous. In the Bible times, it was seen as like a very lowly thing. When guests came to your home and you cleaned their feet, you washed their feet. That was the lowly servant's job. It was kind of like demeaning. I mean, even now, if you imagine someone coming into your home and you wash their feet, firstly, they'll be embarrassed, but what would you be feeling washing their feet? It would be, I had the privilege of someone who washed my feet in honor, and it was like, I can't believe this. It was such an act of honorable serving. Let's look at what motivated Jesus, because Jesus was just motivated by love. And it was a deep, divine, sacrificial love. He had no agenda. He had no hidden motive. His serving wasn't driven by duty. It wasn't driven by fear, but just by a desire to heal, to restore, and to bring people back to God. And so these are some of the things that motivated him. And as you listen to the list, it's like, maybe you're not motivated by any of these. Maybe you are motivated by obligation and guilt, and you just kind of, I'm doing the church a favor. As you listen to these motives and motivations for serving, maybe just grab one and say, Lord, teach me how to serve from that space, because I've never been able to serve from that space. So lean in and let's listen. So first of all, the biggest, the strongest primary motivating factor for Jesus serving was just love for people. He served and serves because he loves, and it's unconditional. It's not based on performance or your social standing or your income or your socioeconomic background. He just wants to heal. He wants to reach out. He's very inclusive, and he's got no double standards. He's got one standard for everyone, and he loves unconditionally. He treats everyone the same. There's no hierarchy of treatment based on what people can give. Sometimes people serve with an agenda. If I serve you, what's in it for me? And I'm serving you because somewhere down the line you're going to owe me. Jesus doesn't serve like that. It's unconditional, sacrificial love. He serves, the second motivation is obedience. He serves out of an obedience to God's plan, and not out of reluctance, but trust. He trusts God. He aligns his life with God's mission of redemption. Thirdly, he has compassion for the broken. He's moved emotionally by suffering, need, and injustice. His heart breaks for people, and that pushes him into action. I include myself in this. I think we've become so desensitized to human tragedy. It's almost become, if you watch the news, it's kind of normal to see, people being shot and people being murdered, and there's a desensitization that I think is quite alarming. And it's, Lord, give me the heart that you have for people. If we think for a moment, and sometimes I think we don't want to think because it's maybe too painful, or we don't want to get involved, we don't want to get emotionally invested, so we kind of just keep distant and removed. But if you think of things like people being in a hostage situation, if you think about people suffering where there's insufficient resources just for basic human survival, like what would that be like? And Jesus is moved. He's moved by that, and that pushes him into action. He has a desire to reveal God's heart. So Jesus serves to show what God is like. God isn't distant and cruel. He's humble and relatable. He's present even with the least of these. His motivation is he wants to bring healing and freedom. His service is about freedom from sin, from shame, from sickness, from fear. And lastly, it's to redefine power. Jesus turns the man's concept of power and authority completely upside down. His power was in his humility. He washed feet. He leads by lowering himself, not to be weak, but to show what strength looks like. And so his entire life is proof that true love always acts. Real love will always act. And that divine service is not about power, it's about presence. Jesus serves not because he had to, but because love, I love this statement, love will always move us towards people. When we love God and we love people, if we love him sacrificially, if we love people with agape sacrificial love, it's almost inevitable that we will be moved and pushed towards reaching out to people. You can't love someone sacrificially and remain a passive bystander who's distant, remote, and removed. It's impossible. So if I look at it in my own life, when I preach, when I teach, when I talk to people, I'm looking at them, I'm seeing them as people, not just a means to an end, or someone who needs to do something for me, or someone who I'm going to delegate a task to. I actually see them as people. And it's like I'm wanting to lift a life where I can. I'm wanting to refresh. I want to encourage. I want to set people up to win. Do a service check. What motivates you to serve? And maybe you need to just have a realignment there. And it's like, it's such an honor to serve people. It's such an honor to touch a life through sacrificial giving. And so how we see service will change how we give service. If we see service as a chore and just an irritating thing that I have to do at church, well then we're not going to grow, and we're not really going to accomplish much by serving. But if we are driven by a motive that's based on the example that Jesus set for us, then serving will be seen as a privilege and an honor. Serving will become something that we find deep fulfillment in, because, we're responsible for the way that we serve. Because when we touch any person, we're touching a son and a daughter of the Most High God. I can't think of any greater privilege than to be given that responsibility. So maybe as we land tonight, it's time for you to do a service check. Maybe you're doing a great job. You're serving from a transparent servant leader heart. Well done, yay. How are you going to take that to the next level? How can you do it more? And it doesn't necessarily mean doing more, but it means how can you love more? How can you love on people with a greater degree of unconditional, generous love? What can you do? It's like looking for opportunities. And it's hard, because if you think of the most hurt we get in life is through people. And the natural inclination is to remove and distance ourselves from people. And there are people who've hurt you, and I'm so sorry about that. But don't let that experience rob you of demonstrating and being Jesus to someone else. And so where you're at with serving, maybe you need to start serving, maybe you need to start serving differently, maybe you're serving awesomely, you need to look at how can I take it to another level of sacrificial serving. The bottom line is lift a life, connect someone to Jesus. That is our purpose. And I'm going to land with that scripture I gave you in Matthew 5. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here to be salt seasoning that brings out the God flavors, and you're here to be light, bringing out the God colors. So get salting, get lighting, have an awesome week. Can't wait to see you next Tuesday. And if you are in the area, we have a fun run on Saturday morning, regardless of the weather. We've got lots of indoor fun for after the race. Register. You can go into our socials and see where you can register on Quicket. Have an awesome week. Take care. Salt and light. See you next time. Bye.